John, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. And Gary is our sponsor here?
Yes, Peter is here.
I'm right here.
Okay, Peter. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's program. Our meeting today is sponsored by Webster Bank, and here representing Webster Bank is Peter Izzo. I'd like to give him the floor for a few minutes to say something.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. Webster Bank is honored to be a continuing sponsor of this series. Today, in today's rapidly evolving business climate, I think it's important at discussions and seminars like these are crucial to keeping pace with the change. Webster Bank is committed to helping the communities that we serve meet these new challenges and economic realities, whether it be through PPP or loans or partnerships like the Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors. The only way we're all going to meet these new challenges is together. I'm looking forward to today's panel. It's an exciting panel. It's in, some important topics I think are going to be discussed. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Peter. And it looks like one of our panelists dropped off for just a second, so I'm going to introduce everyone else first. And first, we have Marlene Cintron, president of the Bronx Overall Economic Development Corporation. Marlene was born and raised in the Bronx. During her trajectory, she has worked for Congressman Robert Garcia, Mayor David Dinkins, Governor Pedro Rosello of Puerto Rico, and New York State Senator Ruben Diaz Sr. In between these government and public policy stints, she has worked for Citibank as assistant vice president and Merrill Lynch as a senior financial advisor. In 2010, Marlene was named president of the Bronx Overall Economic Development Corporation and the Business Initiative Corporation of New York, where she utilizes her government relations and financial acumen to support current and prospective Bronx businesses. Since she became president, the BIC has leveraged over $228 million in loans during a very difficult economy, an increase of over 635%. The unemployment rate pre-COVID has dropped from 14.2 in 2010 to 4.7 this past February. By encouraging and supporting small businesses with the advent of COVID-19, she is once again working towards bringing down the Bronx unemployment rate, which is now closer to 25%. Welcome. We also have Maureen Hallahan, president and CEO of the Orange County Partnership. Maureen, president and CEO of the Orange County Partnership, has led this private not-for-profit office of economic development since 2002. During her tenure, she has worked with both local and international site selectors and developers on over 272 major attractions that brought in excess of 10,000 new jobs to Orange County and generated billions of dollars in capital investment. In addition, in the past 19 years, 270 companies already located in Orange County expanded their operations, which created an additional 7,500 new jobs. As a result of her innovative and collaborative spirit, Ms. Hallahan serves on the boards of the Governor's Mid-Hudson Regional Economic Development Council, the Citizens Advisory Panel at Stewart International Airport, and chairs the board at 17 Forward 86 LDC. Ms. Hallahan's commitment to economic development is evident in the outcomes as she and her team continue to focus on increasing the county's standing as a top corporate location throughout the nation. We're not promoting Orange County, and our Orange County Partnership team actively supports several community initiatives such as the United Way of Dutchess Orange Region, Hudson Valley Honor Flight, Operation Gratitude, and other veteran initiatives. We also have Kathleen Abels, who is the Economic Development Director of Putnam County. Her primary responsibility includes attracting appropriate new businesses to Putnam County. Marketing, public relations, and developing strategic alliances are her top skill sets. Abels was appointed to her current position on July 1st, 2019, after serving on the board of directors of the Putnam County Economic Development Council for several years. She brought with her extensive experience in community outreach, customer service, construction, and project management, as well as a strong set of core values. Abels previously completed a lengthy career at New York State Electric and Gas, culminating as the manager of community outreach and development. More recently, she focused and has pivoted to assist existing Putnam County businesses to survive and recover from the financial disaster incurred by shutdowns necessitated in order to diminish the spread of coronavirus. Also on the panelists, we have two other panelists today. Jeremy Schulman, Director of Economic Development and Tourism and Film for Rockland County. Jeremy practices his trademark style of economic development, diplomacy, and hybrid brand of planning, economic development, and destination management as Director of the Department of Economic Development, Tourism, and Film for the county. He has over 25 years of experience in county, city, and nonprofit settings, creating a business environment that provides companies, not-for-profits, and centers of commerce with the right tools for balanced growth. With a progressive vision to make Rockland the #1 destination for corporate investment and jobs in the Hudson Valley, Jeremy has identified and branded distinct industry clusters and helped dozens of companies relocate, renovate, retool in Rockland through innovative placemaking strategies, public-private partnerships, and asset capitalization. He's a certified planner who earned his BA in history from Brandeis University and MS in tourism management from NYU's Tisch Center for Hospitality and Tourism. And our last panelist is Bridget Gibbons, the Director of Economic Development for Westchester County. Bridget serves as Westchester County Executive George Latimer's Director of Economic Development. In this role, she is focused on attracting and retaining businesses and talent in Westchester. Since the pandemic started, she has focused on providing critical funding, information, and crisis advisory programs to help our businesses recover and become more resilient. So that's a good jumping off point today for our panelists. I'd like to make this more conversational than me just asking questions of you. So feel free to comment on each other's opinions and statements, and certainly, do it in a respectful manner. So Bridget, the last part of your bio says that you focused on providing critical funding, information, and crisis advisory programs to help businesses recover. So can you tell us, 11 months into the pandemic, vaccines are now becoming more widely available. What is the feeling of the business climate in Westchester County? And then if all of the other speakers could pivot off that and speak about that as well. Bridget, you have to unmute yourself. Okay, it looks like Bridget is having some technical difficulties. How about Maureen? Do you want to comment?
So I do have a PowerPoint presentation planned for you guys, so I'll get a little bit more in depth. But in terms of the climate up here and how things are going, especially pandemic related, we have had a tremendous amount of gain in the space where e-commerce and distribution and warehousing comes to play. So that's all happened, I think, as a result of, oh my gosh, retail is going to change the way we're used to it, and people are going to continue to, want their products in a timely way, and they're going to want their items to be delivered quickly. And I think that in that space, we have some of the biggest national developers here in Orange County trying to figure out where they're going to buy up as much real estate as they can, get it prepared so it's ready to go when their portfolio of clients want to move. We're hoping, because we are seeing some trends in manufacturing as well, in that space as well, but in that particular place, we were really safe through the pandemic.
And how's your residential migration? Are you seeing a residential migration out of New York City or even out of Westchester?
So much like our neighbors here, all my colleagues here on the screen, same. I mean, houses are, if they're on the market for a day or two and then starts the bidding war and people are getting more than they're asking for. So there is that. I did learn at a board meeting, or we talked about it at a board meeting the other day, that with the possibility of interest rates, going up a little bit, that could change the bubble a little bit. But as of right now, if you want to buy a house, you either have to be really quick and you have to be ready to pay more.
Okay, why don't we stay on that side of the river? And Jeremy, why don't you give us your opinion?
Well, thanks. It's great to be here this morning with my fellow panelists. And I guess, the word, but aside from pivot, in 2020 is unpredictability, and also transition. So what that means are challenges and opportunities. But, we always abide by the 3 Ps, which is position, promote, and also package. And that refers to properties, so real estate product and inventory. We're having to reposition properties that may have been, for example, nonprofit properties, maybe church properties, maybe retail properties that are vacant, and come up with creative strategies so that they're ready for their next life. And we've been able to do that to some extent with some success, for example, by pursuing innovative industry cluster initiatives. One area is filming in particular. So the former Macy's in Rockland and Nanuet, we were able to help qualify as a QPF, or that's a jargony acronym for Qualified Production Facility. And it means that if a film production comes from New York City and leases the space, they're able to take advantage of an additional incentive. That's the type of programming we're looking at to be able to, work with not only the real estate communities on the call, but also the municipalities, the municipal officials, to meet us halfway and be open to looking at their ordinances, be open for business, be ready for emerging industries like renewable energy. And I just want to add a quick quote. Paul Adler from Rand always seems to have the best sound bites. And he said not long ago, commercial follows residential. And the residential market in 2020 was the best market in the last 35 years. So people are here, and commercial wants to go where the talent lives. And we've seen that to a large extent recently, not only from New York City, but companies coming from New Jersey as well. There's obviously a big opportunity with the new bridge, Maria Cuomo Bridge, that new infrastructure, the addition of a new tourism attraction with the shared use path over the bridge, people coming into Rockland, people taking advantage of lower prices than the George Washington Bridge. It's a benefit not only for the commercial sectors, but for hospitality and tourism. So I'll stop there, let some other people piggyback off of that. And thanks.
Marlene, would you like to pick up?
The business climate in the Bronx is a little bit different. We are a manufacturing zone. We have the Hunts Point Market, which is an $11 billion business in Hunts Point. Since 2010, when we arrived, we saw the value of our commercial properties going from about maybe $4 a square foot for vacant land, $12 a square foot for warehouse land, to go up to $500. And we have not seen any kind of an adverse impact through the pandemic on the value of our commercial property. On the contrary, I wish we had more, because it would mean that we would have an ability to employ even more people. So certainly, with respect to the employment side, this is the bedroom community for many of the individuals who work in the hospitality industry and in the hotel industry. And so that is what has created the unemployment rate to just skyrocket. But on the other side of it, we're also the borough where 1 out of every 4 people works for the hospital system. And we have more hospitals in the Bronx than any other part of the city of New York. So it's been an interesting time. In the last 10 years, we've had a little over, probably way over $90 billion in private equity that has been invested in the borough, and over 36,000 housing units created, and many more still under construction. And so we find ourselves in need to continue to support those businesses that are still here. We created a COVID loan fund. We set aside $1.2 million and we lent it with tranches up to $100,000 at 1% interest, and the first 6 months just totally interest free. And we're about to, actually at 2:30, we're having another conversation with another entity to put up another $1 million to provide way below market rate interest loans for our existing businesses. And basically the rule is if you were profitable before 2020, then and you can give us financials for the 2 years prior to that, we have no problems lending you this money because it means that you will continue to employ our people. So
What's the name of
certainly,
that program and who administers it?
we do. We also have our own. We're very different from most economic development corporations because we have our own money. I still have about another $20 million that I can lend. That money I can only lend in the South Bronx, but because I'm also the president of the Business Initiative Corporation of New York, which is unlimited money, it's SBA 504 money, then certainly we can lend up to $5.5 million for the purchase of commercial property, for the build out and the purchase of commercial machinery. And I just got to plug and thank Webster Bank for being on our big board. And our chairman is from Webster Bank. So certainly we have been an entity where financing, business and real estate have worked with us, and we have worked with them in order to be real solid with respect to where our properties are, both both commercial and non-commercial.
Sure. Okay, moving north from the Bronx is Westchester County. So Bridget, would you like to add?
I apologize, my Zoom crashed just as the meeting was started. So I've just joined about a minute ago. So I'm assuming we're talking about the business climate in Westchester County. Is that, or what?
We are,
where
yes. And actually, yours was the last bio that I read, and I think you crashed right around that same time. And I took
did.
something from the last line of your bio that says that you've been focused on providing critical funding, information, and crisis advisory programs to help businesses recover. So why don't you talk a little bit about that, like what you're doing? How are you doing triage, if you will?
Right. So we were fortunate enough to get $268 million in CARES Act money in 2020. And we carved out approximately $15 million of that fund to give out to businesses in the form of grants. So we did almost 400 grants to businesses. Approximately, I would say the average is about $30,000 per business. And not only businesses, but nonprofits and our chambers of commerce got small grants as well. So we really knew that what they needed was money to just kind of get through, pay their rent, pay their employees, and the money had to be used for any legitimate business expense. So that was critically important. And we hope to do more of that in 2021. Our small businesses are still really suffering. We just need that vaccine out there. We need people to get back where we can get back together. But we are focused we have kicked off a sector focused strategy. Coming out of 2020, we did an economic development strategy, which told us to really focus on 4 key sectors. So we're focusing on the biosciences, we're focusing on advanced manufacturing, financial technology, fintech, and clean energy. So we're putting all of our human resources and our financial resources into those 4 key sectors to grow them. And the reason we chose those sectors is they're resilient. They have fared fairly well, quite well through the pandemic. Many of them are actually involved in the response to the pandemic. They are well-paying jobs, which aligns very well with our workforce here in Westchester County. We have highly educated folks in this county as our workforce, and we think that if we can bring our workforce to those sectors, it can be a real win-win and a really strong growth opportunity for the county. So that's kind of our focus. We're helping our small businesses get through this, and also trying to focus on workforce development in these 4 key sectors.
Great, thank you. Kathleen, you want to pick up?
On mute. There we go. Yeah, during the pandemic, we did pivot our focus from trying to attract new businesses to trying to support our existing ones so they could survive and get through the pandemic. And what we did is we formed a small business advisory committee, which has a dozen or so representatives from all over our county. And these people are business owners in different sectors. We have a physical therapist, a hair salon, a tree service, a restaurateur, a caterer. It's just people in construction, a flower shop. And initially we were meeting weekly, mostly to get the word out because, you know, we don't have in Putnam, we have less than 100,000 people, meaning that we're smaller than the city of Yonkers. So we don't get a lot of federal grants, but we wanted to get the word out about existing programs. In particular, the Paycheck Protection Program really helped a lot of our small businesses to survive, and getting that information out, you know, what it is, that it's a forgivable loan, where to get it, it helped enormously. And of course, now with the vaccine and our COVID numbers or hospitalization numbers are both dropping, there's hope. I mean, for example, 2 weeks ago, the governor said that effective March 15th, you can now go from gatherings of 10 people to weddings of 150. So that's huge because, you know, people in the event and catering business, they lost an entire season. So at least now there's this little glimmer of hope that things are starting to get back to normal. Another thing we're taking advantage of is, as Maureen mentioned, our housing market, there's been an exodus from New York City, and we feel that the businesses will follow the talent as they move up the line. Our real estate prices have gone up, and peculiarly, Putnam County actually experienced an increase in sales tax revenue. So the people that are here and the people that are coming, I guess we're all shopping on Amazon and buying cars, and that has helped enormously. So it was a surprise and a very welcome finding.
Kathleen, can you comment at all on the county's desire, or are they making progress in building out the infrastructure where there's more water rather than any sewer? Is there any progress moving forward?
There is a planned sewer line coming in either from Danbury, initially it was Danbury, Connecticut, but now we found there's an existing sewer treatment plant that was constructed a few years ago that right on the border between Westchester and Putnam County that has excess capacity. So we're looking at having that extend in an easterly and then northerly direction, which will help a lot. We're also, you know, we're taking advantage of tourism as well, because with people unable to do things indoors, we've been attracting people to come up for outdoor experiences. And we now have the Empire State Trail that goes all the way from New York City to Canada, that goes right through Putnam County. And that helps the ancillary businesses as well. And then our focus, one of our focus, like Jeremy, is we created this past year Film Putnam and joined the Hudson Valley Film Commission to try to funnel film and TV productions here. I'm working on getting a qualified production facility, or otherwise known as the soundstage, to take advantage of tax credits, as Jeremy pointed out earlier. But in the meantime, we've had 2 films in a hyper micro budget indie film, which is, we're looking for the big bucks, but you got to start someplace. That was filmed in Putnam. And then actually this week, Noah Hutton, whose father, Timothy Hutton, is a longtime Putnam County resident. He's releasing his first feature-length film called Lapsus, which we think will be a cult classic. It involves a guy who's going through like these magnetic time warps to bring in like cable and stuff. It's supposed to be pretty interesting, and that was filmed primarily in Paterson, New York. It helps a lot because when you bring cast and crew here, a few years ago, The Quiet Place filmed in Pauling, New York, in Dutchess County. They had a cast and crew of 200 people, and those people needed places to sleep. They needed to be fed. And in Putnam, we're close enough. We're not within the 25 miles from the film zone, but you know, they have extended that on location, and we have great locations. So we have created a smug mug roll. We've sent pictures to locate the state's location library. And 2 Fridays ago, the director of tourism and I took a location scout from Brooklyn, and he spent the day with us, and we dragged him hither and yon throughout Putnam County to show him some of the great locations that we have for filming. So we're hoping to get traction in that area as well.
Well, that's great. It sounds like you are getting traction. Let's move off that and talk about major projects currently being built or considered within your county, like something that, you know, people maybe have heard of, but give us some of the details about the planning of those projects. We'll go backwards here. Let's start with Bridget this time.
Great. I'd say the most interesting big project we have right now is an IDA project that was recently approved. Morgan Stanley is doing a multi-year renovation of its 750,000 square foot office complex at 200 Westchester Drive in Harrison. It's a $150 million investment on their side, and it's really a job attraction and retention project. And we're really excited about it's going to create hundreds of new jobs in Westchester County. And it's, right in our target market, our fintech, our financial services sector. So we're really, really psyched about that project. I'm happy that the IDA was able to incentivize it, and that they're, they had considered potentially moving elsewhere, but they're consolidating folks in Harrison in Westchester County. We're excited about that.
So did that start pre-COVID, or was that a post-COVID project?
It did. It started. Yes, it started pre. They were prescient. They started pre-COVID. It was a fairly complex project, they persisted, and and so we've finally approved the project last month, I believe it was. So.
Do you think, you mentioned job growth as part of it, do you think some of those jobs are coming out of New York City?
To a degree, they are doing some consolidation, but it's also going to be new jobs. Yep, new jobs. Okay. Yep.
Jeremy, you want to comment here?
Oh, sure. Thank you. I guess I would be remiss if I didn't mention just kind of Pfizer's expansion, leading the way with the COVID fight and the vaccine development, because their vaccine research division is in Pearl River, right here in Rockland County. And so they have actually expanded. They were expanding that unit before COVID, and it's a robust top 3 employer in the county now. Probably 850 employees, and they have that. Before COVID, they had invested in this vaccine sample storage facility, which at the time was one of 10 in the entire world. So that type of infrastructure, as was mentioned before, in the life sciences really portends well. But some of the other projects, John, of course, e-commerce and warehousing and distribution and transportation and logistics and manufacturing, that sector, it is booming, and there's no perfect vanilla box, so to speak. So again, it's about positioning and being creative and taking advantage of your market location and position to be able to accommodate maybe a new and different product. So Amazon, obviously, they just opened their flex facility in the town of Orangetown in Rockland County, and did a quick renovation. So I think it's about 200,000 square feet in 2 buildings. And there is more of that to come. And obviously they're looking all around in the entire region and planting flags. And from our perspective, because that sector is doing so well, how do you connect that distribution center to Main Street and Broadway? And what I mean by that, those are the sectors that have been struggling the most. Employers of 50 people and less, or 99 people and fewer. What creative strategies can we look to take advantage of or do to boost those businesses as well? And that it doesn't just mean opening an Amazon store on Main Street, although that could be part of it. But maybe local products flowing to the warehouse that are handcrafted and made here in Rockland, made in Westchester, made in Orange County, made in Dutchess and Putnam, to go to that warehouse and go back. Where, so we're constantly thinking of how that evolution, especially in retail, can take place. Some of the other repositions, though, are like the former Tiva Labs, which is in North Rockland. So that was, a large employer right off the Palisades Parkway that took advantage of the parkway for commuters. Wasn't as suitable as other industrial properties for truck traffic, for example. So that asset was recently purchased, and they're undergoing a state-of-the-art renovation now for what I would say are maybe smaller industrial spaces, but the largest might be 93,000 square feet. So there, without any marketing, there's already a waiting list for that type of space. That's the demand. And so while these 1,000+ employee bases, are not being replaced exactly in kind, what they are being replaced with are smaller industries, users, more nimble, taking advantage of automation and technology, and that's happening through throughout Rockland County and the region. One creative thing happening is at the New York Center for Innovation, which is the former Pfizer site, which is owned by IRG. They have not only created a film subsidiary for filming, they've also carved out some co-industrial space, if you will, for micro users, maybe 500 square feet, 1,000 square feet, with some lab space, just some basic infrastructure for entrepreneurs to take advantage of. There's a warehouse that's close to completion now for Linen Choice and Emmanuel Sanders collection. That it's another warehouse, $14 million plus project, 110,000 square feet. A couple of industrial parks have been purchased recently. So, folks are recognizing the assets and investing, and it's paid off, especially during COVID, when these owners and investors are taking the opportunity to make improvements to accommodate, the sectors which I just referenced.
Understood. Marlene, do you want
ahead.
to comment on some major projects happening in the Bronx right now? I think you're on mute, Marlene.
You're all set.
I'm trying to cut some down only because the Bronx is literally under construction, so I'll talk fast. We have a former site of the Whitestone Multiplex, 13 acres. There's a huge building currently under construction, and although there has not been an announcement, there is an understanding that it's going to be a distribution center for Amazon. And so there, we're going to be assuming there's going to be at least 350 to 400 workers there. Amazon has made relatively large investments in the Bronx. We have end of mile distribution center. They bought a whole block in Hunts Point about 2 years ago, and they are now under negotiations to actually build another end of mile distribution point somewhere on 3rd Avenue, right next to the 3rd Avenue Bridge. What continues to attract businesses to the Bronx is that we're still undervalued, and it's a much more pragmatic, business pragmatic decision to move to the Bronx, simply because it's easier to get around. We're close to the GW Bridge, we're close to the major highways, 95, 278, and Manhattan, which is where a lot of these deliveries go to. So certainly that Amazon play works. We attempted to attract Amazon's headquarters to the Bronx and didn't get a buy-in from the mayor. He had the opportunity to send 5 proposals, and instead he sent 4. I don't know if anybody here is from Queens, but he decided to send 2 from Queens to kind of make the mark, and another one from Manhattan, another one from, I think, Staten Island. We all know what happened with that. We have a $100 million project at Orchard Beach, our promenade when it was built many, many years ago, because the construction companies were being lazy, decided to mix the concrete and the cement with beach water. So if you know what happens with salt and metal, it has since all crumbled. And so that's a relatively large project, and we're hoping that it'll jumpstart sometime this year. The governor has given us almost $9 billion since in the last 10 years in order to help us with our infrastructure. And so that has helped us to kind of redirect traffic, truck traffic out of the communities and directly into Hunts Point. So our Bruckner Boulevard is going to be getting north and south new exit points into Hunts Point, entrance points into Hunts Point. And we can't wait for that to happen because the trucks will be happier about it. Our communities will be a little healthier as a result. You've been talking about the movie industry. About 6 years ago, Silver Cup decided to buy a piece of property. And so we got our first Silver Cup studios in the Bronx. Ocean's 8, which was an all-woman movie, was filmed there. And they have just started pulling permits for Silver Cup Part 2. So to know us is to love us. Our biggest project is a $3 billion project. It's a private project. It's at Fordham Landing. It's the piece of property that is west of Fordham Road, right over the bridge. The developer has purchased quite a number of properties in what is next to the roadway or the railway. And
Is that
so
the Stag development you're referring to? Or is that
I'm
another
sorry?
one? Is that the Stag development?
No, it's not Stag at
Okay.
all. No, this is a $3 billion project. And so it's going to be a huge project that's going to include medical buildings, educational buildings, entertainment, and a rather large store. It would be our first in the Bronx that has the name of a fruit. I'm not allowed to tell you. But certainly we're really excited about that. And we will continue to market the area and know that our SBA 504 is not just for the Bronx, it's for all of New York State. So certainly if you need people to be within the confines of the city of New York because their business is located closer to us, they know that there is financial acumen. I sit on the board of EDC, I sit on the board of IDA, and so while we do not provide any incentives, we do provide below market rate financing to make moves to the Bronx a little easier and moves to the city of New York and New York State a little easier as well. So that's my pitch.
Let's jump over to Kathleen now, and then we'll finish. Go ahead.
Okay, so 3 big things that are going on in Putnam County is the Alexandrian, or will be the Glenida distillery, is still a go in the town of Carmel. So that will bring jobs to Carmel. They're going to distill hard alcohol. Our elected officials work very hard to get that covered under a food and bev program. So there are some incentives there, and it will also be a destination. So that's a good thing too. Second, we have a logistics center in the town of Southeast, 1 exit away from the intersection of I-84 and 684. They just got their final approvals. To my knowledge, Amazon is not interested. They do have a final mile destination already in nearby Danbury, but the fact that this logistics center got approved is very important for us. And it makes sense because, you know, you can get from Brewster, New York to the Canadian border and back in a day without violating any CDL laws. And then finally, a project I'm very excited about is Envision Brewster. It started in 2016. It was going to be a transit-oriented development in the village of Brewster, and it kind of stalled. So now there is a new developer who I think you guys probably will all know, Joe Cotter from National Resources. He has done a lot of work redeveloping the water area on Tarrytown and Yonkers. He also has purchased the westerly side of the former East Fishkill IBM campus and calling that iPark 84. And this project will now evolve into iPark Brewster. There are a number of buildings that will have to are considered blighted, and he'll be taking them over. They already have contracts for a dozen or so of those properties. Last night, the village had a virtual meeting on eminent domain and how that process will work. But for the most part, people are buying into it, and they're offering, I am told, fair market value plus 10%. So people are willing to part with their properties. And the new focus, instead of being strictly in phases like start at point A and go in an orderly fashion in an easterly direction, now they're looking at starting in the middle. And what they're looking at in particular is the former Garden Street School, which is at the pinnacle of the village, as well as 67 Main Street, which is presently owned by the town of Southeast, and that houses the museum, as well as the Cultural Arts Association. The top floor of that building has an amazing auditorium that has been shuttered probably for 35 years. So they're looking at that as being the focal point, the jewel in the crown, if you will. And it seems to be moving forward. One of the nice gifts of this is previously it was approved for a $2 million CFA grant. So the new developer has good financing, deep pockets, so he will be able to spend the 10 million in order to recoup the 2 million. So I think that this project is a go, and it's going to reshape Putnam County. So we're very excited about that.
Sounds interesting. Maureen, I saved you for last. You can comment, and then you mentioned you had a quick slideshow. If you want to go into your slideshow after your comments.
Okay, why don't I do that if you don't mind, John? Is it easy to tee that up? Because I can, a lot of the projects that I'll be talking about are in that. Does that work for you?
Yeah, that works for me.
Great.
Gary, are you there? Can you give Maureen control? Okay, great.
Okay, so thanks so much for letting me just put this together. I'll be very brief because we have a very sophisticated audience, and I want to thank all the commercial and residential brokers that are on the line right now. It's all about you guys. So let's just march right through. So we're the Orange County Partnership. I don't have to tell you this. We did the introductions in the beginning. Next slide. So labor characteristics, super quick. Next slide. Our population here is still under 400,000 next in Orange County. And we do draw from a regional talent pool. We do have Metro North up here. Our housing is a little bit more affordable here than in points, south and east. Our schools are still desirable, and our quality of life. I'm going to show you some slides about that coming up next. So our housing market is also a little bit more affordable than the other parts of the region. And I think those people that 36% that we're hearing may never go back to the traditional New York City jobs and will start to work from other locations. I think Orange County is kind of drawing from that talent pool as well. We're seeing that. And next slide. We do obviously have great higher education in the entire Hudson Valley, and New York City and the Bronx and everything else. I didn't put on this slide, but in our little area right up here, we kind of included some of the slides here where our talent pool is being educated in. Next. So the quality of life, next slide, this kind of brings me to some of the projects that we were talking about. Legoland is opening this year. It was tough for us to have to wait that out. And it's really, I'm praying that with the governor and the limitations that we have, that grand opening will still be significant and fun. But of course it's going to be dialed back a bit. But that is going to open. We're going to see that in the spring. And that's a monumental project that's still under construction. There's 600 workers there. I spoke to the major developer of Legoland yesterday, and he still has 600 workers on the job. Next slide. So there is a lot of diversity in our quality of life up here. And I included the region because, you know, we're all in this together, this entire region. I think Mohonk Mountain is one of my favorite places on earth. And I go to a lot of local tourism destinations that I enjoy here in the Hudson Valley. Next. So, and we have a lot of Airbnbs and a lot of other types of hospitality up here. Next. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Cost of doing business. So we do carry the incentives up here. Look, New York State, it's a hurdle that we all have to get over. Being in New York means it's going to be very, very expensive. So we absolutely have to promote our incentives, work with our utility companies to try to find ways that manufacturers and others can come here and afford to be here. And that's what we do with the partnership. That's what we all do. Your whole panel, that's what we do. We try to figure out solutions to make projects happen. Next. Okay, so I don't even know why I put this in here. Oh, okay. So all the pauses that we had for COVID and the halts in construction and things like that, those were our hiccups. John, I think you asked me about that earlier. And yes, of course, there are employees that have lost jobs. Small businesses in some sectors have been decimated. There's got to be a vision for what we're going to do with some of our mall and retail space. And I think that's going on now with national developers. There is our office market was our vacancy rates were high before and they remain to be. Next. And our residential market and commercial, I think we talked about this before. There's a very high demand for warehousing. That's not going to go away. And I hear it. It was really interesting to hear Jeremy and my colleagues on the call that it's all throughout the Hudson Valley. And you know what? It's national. All of us talked about Amazon. Marlene talked about Amazon in the Bronx. We have two of them going up here. Next slide. That we can share a little bit about. And industrial buildings. You can't, if you're not building them, you're not getting them up here. Everything is built to suit. And the spec market, there are national developers that are willing to build spec. So because they know that by the time the roof is on, they're going to have at least, or they're going to be ready to flip it. So of course, what's at risk of, just like Marlene said, and my colleagues, office, hospitality. Hospitality has been taken such a hit. It's terrible, but we're praying that with everything this herd immunity is going to change some things around. I don't know how long it's going to take for people to feel confident again, but we'll get there. Next. Okay, so here's the infrastructure. Next. So one of the things I wanted to just share with you, of course, we have a regional airport. We like to brag that Stewart International is in our county, but it's our airport. This is a regional airport. The thing about Orange County is we have 3 interstate highways. So we not only have interstate, the New York State Thruway and I-84, but the future 86 is here as well. And I'll talk a little bit about that. The Hudson River does have a deep port. And of course, we have Metro North and New Jersey Transit. Next slide. So as we prepare, we just want to share with you the projects that John had asked. So one of the things that we focused on and that our new Senator Majority Leader Chuck Schumer just recently brought up on an HVEDC meeting is that, and he's the first New Yorker ever to hold that position, by the way, and he's pretty darn proud of that. We all are proud of him. But is that the Interstate 86, 17 to 86 is his top priority in terms of infrastructure in New York. We just did a study here at the office on all of the projects that are going on that particular road, just from from Woodbury Common to the border of Sullivan County. You can't believe how many projects, both tourism, infrastructure, and the like, are all coming on that particular road. Next slide. So, and this is the traffic patterns. You guys all know this. Next slide. This is the list of expansions that are just from Woodbury Common to the Sullivan County border. And I can share this with anyone that would like to see it, but and we could drill down deeper what that Goshen hospitality means, how many hotels that is, what the size of this President Container Group expansion and all of the others. But there is a lot going on just in that particular corridor of Orange County. Next slide. And then also we have been investing in corridor studies. So one of the things that you have to do up here is if your sites aren't prepared for future development, people aren't going to come. The days of waiting 2-3 years for a project, it's over. They'll just move on. They'll go to another place. So we just teamed up with the Montgomery IDA to do a corridor study from the 17K border to the village of Montgomery. And what they did is they did an assessment of all the sites, what they're zoned and what the highest and best uses for those sites would be. We want to sort of model that and move it around the county, maybe even around the region, so other municipalities can get their sites prepared for future growth. Next slide. So this is just a map that we did to talk about all the distribution that we have. A lot of companies that are looking to come in want to know what the concentration of distribution is in your county. And you'll see that the biggest clusters are around the cross section of either the New York State Thruway and 84 or the 17 and 84 clusters. You'll see where the major interstates are. And that's where they should be, right along the highways. Next slide. So here's the commercial development update, John, that you had mentioned. The big story is that these national, and in this case, international developers are here in Orange County buying up land, assembling sites. I know, Rand Commercial, we have some big commercial real estate companies here that absolutely understand how to assemble sites like they did for Legoland. They know that companies just can't take what's out there. They have to assemble them and sell them to these national developers. And that's what's done. This particular company came out of Russia. Next slide. They grew into the European market. And this is a brand new park that they developed in Atlanta when they first came to the US. And where are they now? Orange County. So they're looking to purchase large tracts of land in Orange County. Next slide. You've all heard of Scanel. They're here assembling sites in a couple of our different towns, looking to build enormous warehousing and distribution. Next. And this is an example of some of the projects that they've worked on in Connecticut and California, really quality workmanship. Next slide. And this is another developer that's coming in. These are all specific projects that this particular developer is working on. Next. So GFI Partners just purchased a large tract of land here in Goshen, and we were on the call with them yesterday about a 500,000 square foot distribution facility that they're working on. That's also manufacturing and distribution. That's going to be a reality this year as well. Next. Matrix is a huge development company, just got into contract in the town of Newburgh to put up 925,000 square feet and 250,000 square feet. They're already talking to end users. Next. And Frisetto, that's a Jersey-based developer that has really kicked it into high gear here in Orange County. And they're building spec and filling their buildings as quickly as they put them up. And then next slide. Let's show some real projects and numbers. So in our portfolio, there's 33 in manufacturing and 13 in distribution, just to give you some of the balance here. Next. So Amazon is here. They're putting up a 1 million square footer in the town of Montgomery. That is not going to be the largest building in Orange County, actually, even though that's under construction right now. The largest building will be 1.3 million. I'll show you that in a sec. So next slide. We also have a cluster of medical marijuana that's coming in, hoping for the recreational market, and they're purchasing sites and building different types of growing facilities. Next. And we have some more tourism destination. A dinosaur park is going to be developed and built along the 17 corridor. Next. Project Lucky 7. So Resorts World is going to build a VLT that will probably breathe new life into the Newburgh Mall, which is like almost dead at this point right now. That new gaming facility will start to redevelop that corridor and possibly bring in some retail and some other opportunities down there. Next. And we have a lot of sports complex that are coming as well, soccer and basketball and other types of recreational facilities. Next. So these are our expansions. So 15 of them are in manufacturing and 5 in distribution. We just have a couple I'm going to highlight. Next slide. So Medline, this is going to be the biggest building under one roof in Orange County. This is a pharmaceutical distribution company. It's a $100 million capital investment. And it's going to not only save jobs because they're growing into this from a 500,000 square footer, but it's going to add new jobs. That's also in the town of Montgomery. Next. PharmaCann, another medical marijuana facility, actually expanding into a larger facility this year. Next. President Container, one of the largest corrugated box manufacturers in North America. I'm sorry, in the Northeast, sorry about that. Also expanding here. Next. And Dan Scammer, look guys, we need the energy and we need to support these projects. We just have to. The only way to, we're seeing what's going on in the South. We're seeing what's going on in Texas. We can't get this through the Article 10. I get it. We want wind, we want solar, we want more of it, but that takes a lot of expensive real estate. And that can only be purchased upstate New York, and then you have to bring the energy down here. So when they start to downsize Indian Point, we are going to absolutely have to have some backup energy, or we're going to be in big trouble here. So we have to support projects like this, and this one is in the town of Newburgh. Next.
That's a very good point, Maureen. I'd like to just ask the other panelists. We see what's happening in Texas right now. Do you think that there's any chance we go back on the shutdown or slowdown of Indian Point, or is that a done deal?
Yep, this Bridget, it's a done deal. There's no going back.
We're going back.
Yeah, we have to build around it. We have to come up with alternatives.
And I just want to add to that, here in the city of New York, in Queens, EDC's IDA just approved a backup battery station to be developed in Queens. And I just had a conversation yesterday for a 73-acre site in the Bronx for a backup battery station. And so there's new technology that's being considered and makes a lot of sense. And in the long run, although this is very painful, fact of the matter is that this should be safer. And we just need to bite the bullet. I know it's easy for me to say. I'm not the one who's losing Indian Point, but certainly it provides an opportunity for that area.
So I just wanted to say, not in Putnam County, but just a bit north in Dutchess County is the Cricket Valley Energy Center, which must be near completion by now. And what they're going to do is tap into a natural gas pipeline to produce energy, which they can then transmit over a transmission line to Central Hudson, to the Connecticut utility, which I think is Eversource currently, as well as to NYSEG, and that will help to provide more capacity with the demise of Indian Point. So, you know, I look at California with their rolling blackouts, as you pointed out, Texas, not enough energy now that everyone needs heat because of this unusual weather, but at least, you know, there's something that's under construction, if not near completion, that will help us in New York.
You know, John, CPV was cited in New York, in Orange County, a couple of years, took 8 years to get through the Article 10 process and the permitting process. They are up and running, and Cricket Point or Cricket Valley. Yep, was almost in line doing it at the same time. We all knew that it was to help support the downsizing of Indian Point, but it's not enough. So we have to be more creative and allow, but it's a very tough thing for the governor to do. He doesn't want to allow for more fossil fuel because he has a very aggressive, you know, solar and wind and alternative energy project, but he still has to focus on the needs of New York and where we're going. So it's a really tough call for him. You got the trades that are, you know, really kicking his teeth in because they want to build some of these big energy plants. And then you have the environmentalists that say no more, absolutely no more. So it's a tightrope.
And I did hear that from the supervisor of Stony Point that the Lovett plant was just sold and that the new entity is exploring renewable energy. So that would be a case where, perhaps they're able to utilize existing infrastructure and have that knowledge base and expertise to be able to translate that. And then on kind of more on the consumer end, we're also seeing a couple of projects or property owners that are looking at such things as electric charging stations, or putting in dozens of electric charging stations to be able to accommodate electric vehicles and stay ahead of the curve in that respect. And it's interesting to us just because, as was mentioned before, the real estate is so valuable for some of these other uses. But maybe it's not along a highway corridor, for example. And so you can take advantage of that, because certainly some of the public infrastructure that we're seeing with park and ride lots are starting to accommodate electric charging stations as well.
But
And-
that
and
still
what-
takes batteries, and the batteries they don't have a long life. They need storage facilities. There is a big part of that equation. It just, all that battery generation and all of those things, those charging stations have to be energy, they have to be recharged as well. So all of that takes more energy. It's a big issue.
Yeah, and in Westchester, we're really focused on wind. We know that there's a lot of support from New York State in building up the wind capacity. And as part of our clean energy sector focus, we're really going to be focusing on how do we build the capacity from a workforce development and a business perspective in wind.
How do you counter the people who don't want a wind farm in their community?
Well, most of the farms are not going to be local. And most of New York State's initiative is really getting it out beyond Montauk, where it's not even visible, and beyond Block Island, where it's not visible from either of those spots. So it's not a local, it's local jobs that are in the pipeline and the supply chain for the farms that they're building out in the Atlantic.
We've got only a few more minutes left here. I'd like to ask a question regarding, the future post-COVID. Funding at all government levels, the federal, state, county, municipal, is being stressed because of the lack of revenue. Where do you see going forward? We assume there are going to be higher taxes, but where will government have to cut back in funding programs going forward? Or are we just going to get much higher taxes?
I'm speaking for Westchester County. I mean, we're very optimistic. Our sales tax is very healthy. We are very optimistic. We have a balanced budget going for 2021. We are optimistic that the federal government will come through with additional state and local, support, aid for us. We're not really at this point we're definitely not raising taxes, and we are not looking at this point at cuts in the county government services. But I do want to just mention quickly one program that makes me very optimistic for the future, also in Westchester County. It's one of the programs we're running is called Launch 1000. And the goal is to launch 1,000 startups in Westchester County. We have about 450 people participating right now. And it's a fully self-paced, but fully guided, kind of incubator for business people who have an idea for an income stream, and maybe it was a hobby, they want to make it into an income stream. And it's really been incredibly successful. And when these folks finish this program, and we do hope to get to 1,000, when we launch 1,000 new small businesses in Westchester County, we anticipate them potentially going into co-working spaces or taking small leases in commercial spaces. So we see that pipeline as a really kind of the lifeline to the growing of the Westchester economy. And it's called Launch 1000.
Great. We want to go around. Does anybody else want to comment on that?
I would say, public-private partnerships are going to become more important. It's partnerships, with governments and nonprofits, and with private business that have an affiliation with the agencies that they already work with, so that that, for us in Rockland could be like, a community foundation, Rockland Community Foundation, for example, which has already started a collaborative with the Workforce Development Board. And this is so that we could really align industry needs with training and skills that are in demand and are going to shift over time and have shifted already. And that same type of partnership we're looking at with colleges in terms of extending extension centers, developing incubators along industry cluster initiatives in the different sectors that were referenced on the call. And looking at, things such as, and this is something where we don't really have much control over, but opportunity zones. So it's been very difficult, I think, in the region because of the parameters on investing in the community, what they were really intended for. So, I would love to see that criteria be opened up or looked at in a different way to be applied to industry clusters, for example, so that they could really help the distressed communities that they were intended to help.
I just want to add that for us, that public-private partnership was something that we took very, very seriously because of the high unemployment rate that we had when we came in 2010. And sometimes we forget to ask. And that's something that we can never forget to do. And we had a lot of companies that were interested in coming into the Bronx, and we were like, we will help you. We'll provide you, we'll help you with the permits, we'll help you with everything that you need in terms of negotiating with the city and the state. But certainly what we want is that our Bronx residents have an opportunity to bid for those jobs. And when you have people working, they're paying income tax, the companies are paying employment tax. And so, if we get those income and revenue streams coming back, then there's less of a need for cutting where we basically have given everything up for the last year or so. So certainly it may sound a little naive, but fact of the matter is that that's how we were able to cut down a lot of our unemployment rate, which was by asking. And they were more than grateful to have us help them with that. We asked the New York State Department of Labor to help us, help them get the people that they needed. But to have employees that can walk to work, that just have to take a simple bus to work, train stop away, brings value to the employer, because it's been shown that over 75% of the people who live within a 5-mile radius of where the employer is have a high retention rate and a great attendance rate. So certainly work with these companies and work with your communities. And when you do that, everything works.
100%. John, we're economic developers. If we can't, we have to get the projects in. We have to help each other open the door for these projects. We have to have our voices heard on what the value of these projects are. The landscape has changed in my 20 years. The voices are getting louder on that they don't want any growth or but if they understand the value of the projects and the need to have the private sector in so we can partner together, then I think people would understand it better. It's become our job to educate the local community. And it really does come down to taxes too. If we're going to save New York, we have to make it easier for companies to want to be in New York. And I think that's a global picture, not something that we can solve on this particular call, but it just has to be more affordable to be here because there's other states, and I won't name some of them, but that are kicking our butt, so.
And the last thing is that we have to be open to the new technology. I mean, this battery storage facility, not the sexiest thing in the whole wide world, but fact of the matter is that they're going to need engineers. There's a lot of green jobs that are coming, whether we like it or not. And who's going to benefit from that? Our children, our grandchildren, our students. And so definitely marrying them, connecting them to the local colleges in order to ensure that those kids are being educated with this new technology so that they can go right into that job pipeline, which doesn't look like the pipeline that we went through, but certainly is the pipeline of the future. So certainly that's the other part that we have to incorporate into this effort.
Right. Does anybody have a final word? Seeing none, we had a couple of requests, Maureen, whether or not you would share your presentation.
Of course, yes.
So if you could forward that to Gary, and then he can distribute it to anybody who participated today. He'll just send it out to all participants. You don't even have to request it.
You
Okay.
got it.
I'd like to say to everybody, thank you very much for giving us your valuable time today. We know how busy you all are. It was very informative, and we really appreciate your insight today.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Yeah, thank you for having
Awesome.
me.
Yeah. Great morning.